Hey everybody, I thought that this is a good point this semester and that we finished up the first project more or less and are almost halfway through the semester to take a time to for us to just talk a little bit about what's coming next these last two big projects. Okay, so I have some discussion here below and I want everybody to post at least one comment to acknowledge that they've read this and thought about this and watched the video that I'm showing you here, but also read what other people have to say. But I hope that there's more questions and discussions and things like that, so we can start getting an idea and a handle on what's coming next with these last two projects. Okay. So the last half of the semester, we kind of go back and forth between these two assignments. Sometimes we'll be talking more directly about the social media assignment. Sometimes we'll talk more directly about the website assignment. But you need to think in terms of time for working on both of these things at the same time. Okay. Um, and that's one of the challenges of the course is like, how do you do that? How do you work on both of these things at the same time? Let's back up for a second and talk a little bit about, again, those Codecademy assignments things. Um, so uh, so just why do we do that in the first place? And I just want to review this real quickly because it's a frustrating assignment for some people, especially in an English class. And there's reasons why I still think this is really important. First off, I think a bit of familiarity with HTML and CSS matters and can help you navigate various aspects of these other parts of the assignment. The other thing is you're going to need to learn WordPress because that's what we're using to make the website with. There's a lot of reasons not to like WordPress. I get it. And I don't like how it keeps asking you to charge you money and stuff like that. But the reason we're using WordPress is because you can use it for free fairly effectively, and also because it is what people in the real world actually use to make websites. So it's a practical skill that if you can learn something about WordPress, you might actually have something to put on a resume or to take into a job someplace. Okay. Three additional lessons I hope you took from these, take from this assignment, the last two. When it comes to working with HTML and CSS and WordPress and things like that, the details matter in ways that are different for most English majors. You know, in English, we're used to saying stuff like, you have your interpretation of the story, I have my interpretation of the story. That's close enough. We can have our differences. When it comes to doing these kinds of activities, it's very precise. There's a right answer and a wrong answer. And it can be kind of frustrating sometimes to figure out what that right answer is. Okay. Um, the second reason is this stuff takes a lot more time than you think. As I mentioned before, I think that maybe some people thought, "Oh, how hard could this be?" And then they kind of got behind the eight ball and started getting a little bit late on this stuff. Don't do that for this last part of the class, because for this last part of the class, you really are going to have to work on this in bits and pieces over the course of several weeks in order to put this together effectively. Um, the other thing that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to learn more about WordPress kind of on your own, because the only way that people really learn how to do any of these things is to fiddle around with it. So think of that first website that you made with WordPress as like a sandbox where you can try different things, experiment with different themes and stuff like that. You can create different installations of WordPress too to try out different themes and to try out different things and different functionality and stuff. The web is alive with help on using WordPress. If you do a search for how do I do almost anything, you will come across tutorials and lessons and things like that, some better than me. And of course, that's part of the process. Part of the process too is like having conversations about this. You should ask me questions about it directly, but also hopefully we'll, in some of these discussions that we're going to have, these updates that we're going to have about our progress, you'll have a chance to ask questions and stuff with other people. Okay. So here's some basic thoughts on this going into the social media analysis assignment. You know, like some things that I want you to keep in mind as we're going through this. Okay. First thing you need to do is spend some time with whatever entity you're following on social media. So check in on it once in a while. You can look back at what they did before, before, of course, and to sort of like see what they've been doing over the last year or two or something like that to see patterns and things. You also should look at your entity across different platforms. So maybe they primarily use Instagram, but they also use TikTok. Maybe they primarily use Facebook, but they also use um, Blue Sky. Who knows? Whatever the sort of like patterns are, but probably across more than just one platform for most of these people. As you look through your social media entity, the company, the influencer, the social cause, whatever it is that you're following, take some notes. Make sure that you keep track of some interesting posts. Save some of those interesting posts because you might want to include some screenshots and links to those things in your essay because you're going to have to explain what it is that you're following, especially if you're following some sort of kind of niche influencer. A couple of you are following like people who are gaming people or people who are fashion people and things like that. And some of you are following like Coca-Cola or Starbucks or McDonald's, and you probably don't need to explain to us much about what those are, but these are the things you will. Key with this assignment and also with the website assignment, but really key with this assignment is making connections to the readings. We read these things from Eichhorn and Hanley on purpose. And part of what I want you to do is to quote from these things in your essays as you're analyzing the social media things. And you'll see a lot of good advice from Hanley that is applicable to this. So, like the first part of Hanley we've read so far, and this is true with this book, the first couple parts of it are, as much as anything else, writing advice to you or to anybody who's writing. But there's also parts in this first thing that you can look at as, does your social media entity do this? For example, Hanley talks a lot about it's important for these for brand loyalty to create good content. Do they do that? It's important for social media writing to be about connecting with an audience. Are they doing that effectively? It's important to have show some empathy with your readers and things like that. She talks about all this kind of stuff in the first couple parts of the book. The latter part of the book, you'll see she talks very specifically about how to post in different kinds of forums. So she has advice about posting in LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever else, and you can sort of like make connections there as well. Okay. So, in other words, if you observe something in your social media entity that Hanley talks about, that's an opportunity to make a connection to those readings. Okay. Now, when it comes to this essay, when it also comes to the essay that's the website reflection essay, this is where this time around you will have to use a Google Doc and you'll have to do it from beginning to end in one Google Doc. No copying or pasting from some other platform. And you have to share it properly with me so that I can edit it. Now, we haven't talked much about this yet, so I'll just be very brief about it now. There's basically two reasons why you need to do this, okay? One is because of the role of artificial intelligence. I don't really mind if you use artificial intelligence as part of the brainstorming process or part of the revision process or proofreading and things like that. But obviously, I don't want you to just use AI to write your essay. So I look at the version history in your Google Doc to make sure that you actually wrote it because it does update your essay every couple of minutes or so. And so I can tell how the writing process is literally going from the time you start with a blank page until the time you turn it in. Um, but the other reason I do this is because I also want you to sort of demonstrate the writing process. I wanted to see that you did like work on this over a series of days and things like that. And then the last reason is if there's any revision opportunities at the end of the semester, I use the version history to sort of figure some of that out. Okay. Anyways, we're going to start peer review on the social media analysis on March 26th. So that means if you're thinking in terms of like, when do I need to have a draft of this due? That's the day, and then you'll have some chance to revise. Okay. Now, onto the website. This assignment is not so much about generating a lot of text or a lot of content. You're going to have to write an essay where you reflect on the process. But the main reason you're starting with some sort of document in the public domain is I don't want you to concentrate so much on creating the content of the site, so much as figuring out a way to edit it and make it yours by how you present it. Okay. Now, I talk about this in terms of representing the text in a way that's meant to be experienced online. Um, Worth noting here two things that Hanley talks about and some other people talk about. Writing online in general is a lot like marketing and journalism. Okay. Social Hanley basically talks about when it comes to social media writing, you are always trying to sell a product. And even if that product is just you, that is the mindset that she has, and I think is pretty accurate about how social media can work. Websites, I think, are similar, but we'll read some stuff later on in terms of like how when people come to a website to read it, they usually are not reading it from beginning to end like they would like a poem or a novel or something like that in a print document. Rather, they're using it. They're reading it to use it. They're reading it to find something that they're looking for in that text. Okay, that's part of the challenge here. Is like how do you take a text that's meant to be read as a beginning to end kind of experience on the page and turn it into something that can be used and searched and looked at in a variety of different non-linear multimedia sort of ways. Okay, so that's kind of what I mean by representing it as an online experience, and how you do that is really up to you, and that's going to be the really creative part of it. I guess one way to think about it is think about your making of this website as sort of like the process of turning a book into a movie. Okay, now, we've probably all seen movies that we were based on books that we've read, and sometimes those movies are very faithful to the original story and plot. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they leave out entire characters or change the endings or whatever. We've all seen movies like that. Sometimes those movies work, sometimes those movies don't. It's the same with movies that are overly true to the plot of the book. I'm sure you've seen some movies like this, I have, where they probably should have deviated from some of the details of the novel in a way that they didn't. But this is the point. You're going to have to redo things differently because of the medium and because of the goal. So don't be afraid of making changes with that text that's in the public domain. Again, that's one of the reasons why we're working with a text that's in a public domain. Okay. Um, Having said all that, your website's going to have some sort of particular audience you're trying to reach in mind, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Hanley talks a little bit about that, and we'll talk about that with some of the usability testing. But you want to have a ideal persona for a reader of your website in mind. Your website is probably going to consist of on WordPress of several different pages where you divided up content into different sections or parts. You're going to have some graphic elements and images, not just text, and perhaps some other things that you have in mind, in particular with the text that you're working with. Um, Hanley has a lot of advice about this, especially later on in the book in terms of web pages and how to write and how to arrange things and make emphasis on links and stuff like that. We'll also read some other things after the break that talk a little bit more specifically about website design as opposed to working with social media. But this is something you want to start on now. You want to start this now by first playing around more with WordPress, explore different themes, try different features, just see if you can learn better how WordPress works, because the more you know about WordPress as a writing tool, the better you'll be able to use it. Also, starting from now, start asking for ideas from both me and your classmates. This is discussions part of that process, but we'll have some updates throughout the semester that also get into that part of that process too. Okay. We'll start an in-class usability test on March 19th, which means you need to have a draft of this thing basically ready to go to show to other people in class. It doesn't have to be completely done. You might have a box that says you're going to have an image there later or something like that, but it's got to be close enough that you can show to other people. Then at the end of March, we'll be doing your own usability test with someone outside the class. This will be a family member or friend or roommate or someone not in the class who you can show this website to, and who you can ideally do this in person. We'll talk about that later on. And you can literally watch them how they interact with the questions that you want them to answer, the problems that you want them to solve as they try to work through the website. It's basically like peer review for a website, but you're watching as the creator of that website to see what they did and if they did what you intended them to do, if that makes any sense. We'll start the reflection essay, and the website project is due on April 9th, and that's when the whole thing is due. That's when we'll start talking about when the whole thing will be due. And again, that reflection essay about the website is also a single Google document that has an AI use statement and that kind of thing. And then the whole thing is due, it does not, it says on my slide here, April 1G, I meant April 19th. Okay. Hopefully that helps get the ideas going about how to think about these last two assignments. But I'm really curious to see what people have to say in the discussion below. So post those comments underneath there, and let's see what people say. All right. See you online.